So the title of my independent reading book is called The House on Mango Street by Sandra Cisneros. First, let's look at who the main character is. The main character is called Esperanza, and she is a Mexican-American girl living in Mango Street, which is also the reason why I tried to dress up like a Mexican. So I wore a traditional hat and a patterned striped shirt or jacket. So I wanted to portray Esperanza, her character, by visualizing the metaphors that were used in the book. First of all, if you look at the left-hand side of the paper, you can see an image of a girl, but it's like divided in half. And I intentionally did this to represent that Esperanza is still growing and she's still in the process of finding her true identity. Moving on to the first image, the quote here says, 4 skinny trees with skinny legs and pointy elbows like mine. 4 who do not belong here but are here. So I thought this first part of the quote represents Esperanza's self-perception over physical appearance, which is also parallel to her feeling of awkwardness and alienation in her community. Also, I drew the roots of the tree that looks like it's still growing to represent that Esperanza still has the determination to grow despite the struggles she faces. And for the second part of this quote, it's likely that Esperanza sees these 4 trees as something that were misplaced in the city where they are not cared for. And similarly, she also feels like herself and also her neighborhood are being neglected by the city. So overall, I think this mango tree symbolizes Esperanza's struggles to grow in an environment that doesn't fully support her. The second visual representation depicts an image of Esperanza's neighbor, who's called Rafaela, and she is a woman who is always trapped at home waiting for their husbands to come. And the corresponding quote is, gets locked indoors because her husband is afraid Rafaela will run away since she's too beautiful to look at. This observation by Esperanza symbolizes her desire to escape because she does not want to be trapped like Rafaela. She also realizes the reality of the life of women, like they're constantly being controlled and restricted by their husbands. And through this observation, she dreams of having an independent life beyond the traditional societal expectations. And then the last visual representation here is an image of a ladder going up to the sky. And I thought this image well corresponds to this quote. And it says, I'll say goodbye to Mango. I'm too strong for her to keep me here forever. One day I'll go away. So here the ladder to the sky symbolizes Esperanza's desire to escape and reach for something beyond the Mango Street. And this long ladder also represents effort and determination that's required for her to overcome the barriers around her in order to escape. Next, I put an image of a notebook because writing is something that represents Esperanza, and it's very meaningful to her because she feels a sense of freedom through writing. And I intentionally put an image of a notebook, one with words written on it and the other one without any words. So on the left hand side, the words I am represents her search for identity, and one day represents her hope and aspiration for the future, which also symbolizes her possibility and patience. And then the blank paper that's next to it represents Esperanza's potential as a writer and her desire to tell her own story. This also symbolizes her own power to shape her future, like an open space where she can define herself and find her true identity. Below, unlike the previous page, I put the other half of Esperanza, one that is taller, to represent her growing maturity and that she's now found her true identity. So while the quote on the left says something like, who am I? Why can't I be like them? I want to escape. The quotes on the right hand side says, I'm not like me. I am me. I'll write my story. I won't let this place define me. And a bunch of other quotes that represent her confidence and determination to break free from Mango Street. Next is the depiction of Esperanza and other characters. Esperanza, of course, is a major character, and she's also round, dynamic, and complex as she develops greatly throughout the book. and she's also a foil character to Sally. Next is Kathy. Kathy is a temporary friend of Esperanza until Tuesday, and she's a minor and static character. Below Kathy, we have Sally. Sally is also a minor and static character, and she is a foil character to Esperanza, which I'll talk more about briefly later. And then we have Lucy and Rachel. They are relatively major characters because they are best friends to Esperanza, and they've had a great influence on shaping Esperanza's identity. For example, the quote here says, they taught Esperanza how to cross and uncross her legs, and to run like a double Dutch rope, and how to walk to the corner so that the shoes talk back to you with every step. And then lastly, Rafaela is also a minor and static character, but she is the one that helped Esperanza realize the limitations women get in society. And she learns this by observing Rafaela being trapped at home all day. So I said Esperanza and Sally, they are foil character to each other. So I created a potential social media page for each of them. So on the left hand side, we have Esperanza. Her Instagram ID is Let Me Be Free, which also reflects her inner desire to earn freedom. And her social media profile photo is birds, which represent freedom. She doesn't have any follower because it is true that she is not popular among friends, but also because she knows that other people wouldn't understand her, so she rather wants to be private in conveying her messages rather than open to public and get criticisms. If you look at the three posts that are on the bottom, it says "Who am I?" and this will represents her going through an identity crisis or identity confusion. And then the three upper posts represents her desire to break free from Mango Street, her desire to own her own house, which she can actually point to, and also how much it shows how much writing means to her. And then on the right hand side, we have the social media page for Sally. Her Instagram ID is Beautiful Girl because she knows that she is beautiful and she wants to expose herself to others to gain more popularity. That's also why she has 30 followers, which is quite a lot compared to Esperanza, because she is popular and she wants to expose herself more. Her poster, the three posts on the bottom says no regrets, love and happiness, and feeling myself. So from here we can see that Sally thinks true happiness comes from marrying a guy and possibly living a stable life with a family. But it's also different for Esperanza because Esperanza thinks the true happiness comes from education and writing, which is also the reason why she puts high emphasis on writing. And then the other three posts represent her romantic love life and her beauty and her popularity. First, there's the House of Esperanza. I designed it like this because the book described it as it's small and red with tight steps in front and windows so small. Bricks are crumbling in places and the front door is so swollen. Next, there is Sally's house. There wasn't direct description that described like physically how Sally's house looks like, so I envisioned it by interpreting this quote. Her father says to be this beautiful is trouble. They're very strict in their religion. They're not supposed to dance. So from this quote, it feels like her family is very strict. So I designed their house in a way that is kind of isolated from others, which is also the reason why I put this image in the corner. And the three men in front of the house are like guardians that restrict people from coming into her house. So this overall look of this house represents how strict her family is. Below that, there is Rafaela's house. Similarly, there wasn't any direct description, so I envisioned it to look like this by interpreting this quote. Rafaela leans out the window and leans on her elbow and dreams her hair is like Rapunzel's. Rafaela wishes she could go and dance. Her house is also looks like it's isolated, and you can see Rafaela through the window. And from this, you can see how desperate Rafaela wants to go out. And this also shows how strict her family is. On the right hand side corner, there is Rachel and Lucy's house. I intentionally designed the house to look poor because the quote says, "Their clothes are crooked and old. They're wearing shiny Sunday shoes without socks." So this is why I designed it like this. I also put an image of a bicycle next to it because the first encounter of Esperanza with Rachel and Lucy was through bicycle. Below there's Tito's house, which is mentioned very briefly in the book, so I won't go into much details. And then we have Kathy's house below, which looks really nice and wealthy. I designed it like this because the quote says, "Kathy's father will have to go to France one day and find her great cousin on her father's side and inherit the family house." So it looks like Kathy's family is very rich. Next is plot. I'll really briefly talk about plot. So Esperanza moves into a sad and red and crumbling in places, which is the red house, and then she meets her first friend, Kathy, which is her temporary friend until Tuesday, and then she meets Rachel and Lucy, who soon becomes her best friends, and then she contemplates on what it means to be free by thinking of Rafaela, because Rafaela is always stuck at home and just wait for her husband to come. And then she realizes gender dominance. And then through some interaction and experiences with the boys and Sally, she discovers the power of writing, which eventually contributes to her acknowledging her desire to both leave the mango street and her responsibility to return and help others. So overall, this plot centers around Esperanza's journey of finding her identity and seeking freedom. And then I'll talk about settings. The first setting is at school. This is the place where Esperanza struggles with her own identity and realizes the clear gender divide between men and women. For example, the quote here says, "At school, they say my name funny as if the syllables were made out of tin and hurt the roof of your mouth." So this makes Esperanza go through identity confusion. And similar to that, another example would be when Esperanza interacted with another friend. She says, "That one," pointing to a row of ugly 3 flats, the ones even the raggedy men are ashamed to go into. And due to this interaction, it further contributes to growing Esperanza's desire to own her own house where she can actually point to. Moreover, there is another quote. It says, "I started to cry. Lots of boys and girls watched while I cried and ate my sandwich. The bread always greasy and rice cold." This quote represents Esperanza as a girl who gets pointed from people a lot, possibly due to her differences. So overall, the setting, school, reveals the disconnect between Esperanza's identity and those people perceiving her. It also contributes to making Esperanza feel uncomfortable and possibly less confident about her identity at home. Last but not least, I'll talk about the narrator's perspective. So she repeats this line at the start of the book and at the very end of the book, and the line is, "We didn't always live on Mango Street. Before that we lived on Loomis on the 3rd floor, and before that we lived on Killer. Before Killer it was Polina." So she repeats this line. The narrator is also Esperanza, by the way. So she repeats this line to emphasize her journey of self-discovery, and it underscores the repeating nature of her experience by reflecting her past and also realizing her identity, realizing that her identity is shaped by where she comes from. And then she uses symbolism. It says, "Everybody in our family has different hair. My papa's hair is like a broom. My hair is lazy. It never obeys birds or hens. Carlo's hair is thick," and so on. So the symbolism of hair here represents, it reflects the theme of individuality and identity, and also the fact that Esperanza described her hair as lazy indicates that she has not yet found her true identity. Next is the metaphor. The line is, "I'm a red balloon tied to an anchor." So here the red balloon represents something that has a full potential like Esperanza, but it's tied to an anchor, like a force that resists her to be free. So this metaphor describes herself as someone who has the potential to thrive in this world, but is constantly suppressed by society. And lastly, the narrator uses short and powerful syntax like, I'm too strong for her to keep me here forever. This creates a sense of clarity and determination, and this concise structure amplifies the speaker's inner strength, which also plays a role in emphasizing her desire for independence and escape from these constraints. Yeah. That is it for my presentation. Thank you for watching.